we're going to be reviewing something we learned a long time ago, how to make equations of lines. And so we're going to start with a table, and I'm going to walk you through the steps. This first step says, by how much are your y values changing? Now remember that we have become big boys and big girls, and y is now f of x. So if you look over in the table, instead of having the y in the table, I have f of x. So I just want to make sure that you're understanding where that is coming from the table. So when it says how much is it changing by? Well, what it's saying is, how do I get from 7 to 9? Well, hopefully that one you can do in your head and say, well, I'm adding 2. What happens if you can't do it in your head? Well, you pick a number, like if I picked 13, I would subtract the number in front of it. 13 minus 11 is 2. What that is telling me is that I am changing by 2. So what is my change? It is 2. Next question. So I have that already there. What is your y values changing by? Now I'm saying that this is called your change in y. We're going to use that in a few minutes. Okay? Now it says, by how much are your x values changing? So this time I'm looking at the x side of the table. Well, right here, it's changing by 1. It's going up 1. And if I look, it's doing that every single time I am going up 1. Now, I'm not going to put the plus sign. I'm just going to know that that is a positive 1, but it is changing by 1. Okay? How are we going to use that? Next thing it's going to ask me for is, what is the slope? Hopefully, as you're going through this, you're like, oh, I remember doing this. Yeah, we've done this in 8th grade. We've done this in 9th grade. This is just a review. Well, a reminder is your slope is your change in y, which is 2, over your change in x, which is 1. Okay, it starts out as a fraction. We always want to reduce our fractions. 2 divided by 1 is equal to 2. So we have a slope of 2. Okay, so right here I've listed my slope as 2 so I don't forget it. Now it says, what would be the y value? Again, y is your f of x when x is 0. So I look over here, x is 0, my y value is 7. Now we're going to call that, and give it a name. You've learned it before, it's called the y-intercept. That's where on a graph it crosses the y-axis. Okay, let's put this all together. Now it's asking us for the function. We've been trying to get to this. This is a review. Once again, most of you are probably bored, but what does the function look like? The only thing that we're changing in place of in place of y, we are now using f of x because we're big boys and big girls now. Okay, so my slope was 2, and my y-intercept is 7. What would that look like if I, didn't have all the extra stuff? This is what I would write down. F of x is equal to 2x plus 7, and that would be my function of the line. Let's try another one. By how much are your y values changing? So we're going to come over here again, and let's say I don't notice what that number is. What would I do? I would take the second number, which is 9, and I would subtract the first number, which is 5. Okay, 9 minus 5 is 4. What is that telling me? That is telling me that I am changing by 4. Okay, so my y values are changing by 4. And then this is called our change in y. Next up, it's asking us for our x values. Hopefully this one is easy to see. If not, you can subtract them, but every single time it's just changing by 1. It's going up 1, which is a change of positive 1. So what do we do next? We're going to put that in our slope. So what is the slope? Just a reminder, what is the slope? It is your change in y, which is 4, over your change in x, which is 1, and we reduce that fraction to get 4. Let's put it together now in, skipped a step. We gotta have that y-intercept. This one's weird because remember our y-intercept, it says what would be the y value, so I'm looking here in this column, when x is 0. Well, if I look in this column here, I'm not seeing a 0. But we know about patterns, and we can fill in our pattern here. Where would 0 fit in my table? Well, 0 would fit above the 1. Okay, if I were counting, I would have my 0 before this. So I'm going to put it at the top of the table because it kind of looks like it fits right now. Okay, and that's just going down by 1, this one's going down by 1, so it does fit right there. So if I am adding 4 here, what do you think I would do to go backwards? Well, I would subtract 4 to go backwards. So 5 minus 4 is going to give us 1. Now, I know that looks weird. I was doing a minus 4 to go backwards, but remember our patterns are going down, so it's actually adding 4. You have to kind of think this through. Every time here I'm adding 4, okay? But if I'm going backwards to find this number, I would do the opposite, which is subtract 4. 1, 5, 9, 13, 17, 21, and that fits our pattern. So my y value, which is my y-intercept, is 1. Now let's put it in our function. We're going to do the fill-in-the-blank method again. Our slope is 4, and our y-intercept is 1. How would I write that?
Ethan Gamble, please come to the office. Ethan Gamble, please come to the office.
You wouldn't want to be Ethan Gamble in this video. Okay, so now we have f of x is equal to 4x plus 1. Okay, so we're going to do some now. I don't have all the helpful hints. We're just going to walk through it. The first thing that we're looking for is we're saying, hey, what is my change right here? If I'm not sure what it is, I take my 9 and I subtract the number in front of it, which is 3, and I'm going to get 6. So my change in y is 6. And remember, we put that over our change in x. Well, over here, every time it is going up by 1. Okay, so my change in x is 1. If you remember back in the day, we would just say, hey, we're going to slide it to the right. Now I'm just saying it's y over x. It's the same thing. What is 6 over 1? It is 6. Now we've got to get our y-intercept. Okay, I'm going to erase some of this stuff here. Our y-intercept is when x is equal to 0. 0 is not in my pattern, so I'm going to fill it in right here. And then if I was going up 6 here, I am going to go down 6 now. So I'm going to go 3, subtract 6, and that will give me -3. So if I follow my pattern, I want to make sure that it makes sense. -3, then 9, then 15. That does make sense. Okay, so my y-intercept over here is -3. I'm going to rewrite it because I don't like double signs here. So it's f of x equals 6x. I'm just going to put a -3. When you have this plus a negative, that is the same thing as -3. Okay, here's our last one. You should probably pause the video and try it, see how good you are. Okay, we're back. Now I took things off every time I've taken a little bit off. First thing we have to do is get our slope. So we're going to find our change right here. Ooh, this one's kind of tricky because it's got negatives. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that trick that I talked about. Take your second number and you subtract the number in front of it, which is the first number. And you could do any one of these. You can start down here and subtract 1 in front of it. You could start here and subtract 1 in front of it. It doesn't matter which one you use. -1 minus 1 is -2. So my change here is -2. Whoops, I didn't mean to erase that too. Okay, and then over here, man, that's kind of nice. Every single time I gave you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that means that this is just adding 1. So we're going to bring this, it's change in y over change in x. What is -2 divided by 1? It is -2. Okay, so my slope is -2. I always put an x by my slope. And then I've got to figure out what is my y-intercept. So y-intercept is when your x value is 0. Again, I don't have a 0 over here. I'm going to fill in where it would fit in the pattern. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I was going down 2 here, now I'm going to go up 2. So I'm going to take my 1 and I'm going to add 2, and that will give me 3. So let's see if this makes sense. I'm going 3, then 1, then -1. I'm going down. That does seem like it is a pretty good number. So since it is 3, that means it is +3 because it is positive. So my equation or my function is f of x equals -2x plus 3. Hope that helped.